to see if it is collectivist enough or not. And if you want to make some headway in this world, you better become a collectivist. Of course, you might lose your own integrity along the way, but that's your decision and not mine.
Tony, the president had a task force on education, and they said that education had really declined, and it's really not important to look at the causes, it's important to look at the cures. We have to go ahead and improve education.
Well, I've got a simple answer to that. The report was useless, because what did it do? It just provided more money to do what has been done before. That was the same thing they did in the 50s. Remember when Sputnik went up in 1957? Oh, we got a tremendous problem in mathematics and science. They poured billions into education. It didn't change the fundamental basis, which is to train you to be a cog in the state machine. So my solution would be quite a simple one. I'd just halve the funding.
Halve the funding.
Halve the funding, and if they didn't get their act together, to put it bluntly, and get a freedom, an educational system which would bring out innate talents, I'd halve it again. And just keep halving it until the educational people understood the function of education is to develop the individual, not to develop a state machine.
Now, they said that Japan and European nations, and perhaps even second world nations, were going to start to catch up and exceed the United States because of our failure of education. Now they're funding it, they're going to give it more money. Are you suggesting that that's an objective, to have the United States continue to decline in education so that other nations catch up? Or is that sort of an unfortunate consequence?
I would put it a little more broadly than that. There seems to be a pattern to have the general United States standard of living decline. And not only education, but in order to raise the rest of the world to the American standard of living, they're going to allow the American standard of living or force it down, because the system here over 200 years has been too successful. And of course you can't take our successful system and apply it to underdeveloped countries, because after all, what was the success based on? Individual initiative. And that's the last thing they want. So they've got a problem. You've got these statist and Marxist statist countries who are underdeveloped. You can't apply free enterprise, because then you've lost your statist control. You somehow got to raise them, and the way to raise them is to take some from the United States and give it to them, and hope we'll all end up at the same level. So it's a broader thing than education. It applies to finance, it applies to economics, and a number of things.
Well, they said in this report also that if a foreign power had done this to us, that we would consider it to be an act of war, that it had so seriously weakened the United States. Based on what you were saying earlier about the order sponsors war and revolution, if the order has carried this out and has been primarily responsible, would you consider this to be an act of revolution?
I think the order has been at war with the United States in general since 1833. There's no question about that, when you look at their individual actions.
And that is because if the flower of the United States, the flower of freedom, was to become what its potential was, their very elite positions would not have a stronghold.
Exactly. Exactly.
The greatest single threat to this breed that has antedated Christ is the nation that has itself founded upon a constitution that guarantees, absolutely guarantees, the rise of the individual.
This is one of the problems. They cannot live with the Bill of Rights. In fact, this is why when Archibald MacLeish, a member of the order, wrote the Constitution for UNESCO, it was built into there that UNESCO would gradually try to erode press freedoms. In the Trilateral Commission, you'll find the same criticism: too much freedom of the press. There's just too much freedom for these people. They can't live with the Constitution. They tried to change the Constitution through the Fund for the Republic down here in Santa Barbara. They're not being successful yet, but they realize that there are roadblocks they've got to overcome to achieve what they want.
The most unfortunate thing to me is that when the people have coming at them from all directions this momentum of the order, they turn and espouse the order, or they let these people, or have in the past, become their idols, accept that they are an elite, accept that fact that they are superior, accept the projection from them to the people that they're superior.
Yes,
and today you will find people agreeing with the limitation of freedom in various sectors of this country for various purposes.
That's a very unfortunate part of our society, that too many people are willing to abandon freedom for security, or what they see as security. You can get security in a Siberian gulag, but you can get freedom in Hitler's concentration camp. But too many people are willing to give up freedom for security. Too many people are willing to look at these people as miniature gods. And because they have achieved power, don't ask how did they get power or what they're going to do with the power, but just the fact that they have power makes them a god, and therefore they worship them. This, to me, is unbelievable. People, I put in one of my books, we've got 20, 30 million degree holders in the United States. People have earned a college degree, but they don't question statements which are made by these people.
Well, it's an amazing thing that people, educated people, can accept that the interference with private property rights, or with the press, or public assembly, or religion, free speech, the interference with that can somehow be necessary to the continuity of the republic, or the security of the nation.
It's ridiculous. I can't answer for these people. All I hope is that they will examine their own consciences and their own minds.
Well, Tony, I think that in conclusion, it's very important that we understand how you develop in your third book, which is about to come out, the development of conflict to produce war or peace at their choosing, and how that has worked, let's say, in Vietnam, or in the situations that are occurring today in the Middle East, where there is great conflict. How is the order managing the conflict we see on the globe today?
Well, it's, as I mentioned before, basically it is using the Hegelian dialectic. You establish one side, then you establish the other side, then you bring them into conflict, then you manage that conflict. So you establish Soviet Union, you establish Hitler, you bring them into conflict, World War II. By managing the conflict, you can control the next decade or so. And as I mentioned, we built up the Soviet Union. We're building up Red China today, Communist China. We're even going to send the military technology. So by 1990, 2000, we've established the two sides. We bring them into conflict.
Now tell me, why does Reagan go along with these agreements with Red China, which he just did, to supply this technology? He's not a member of the order. Why does he respond to its stimuli?
Because you've got a group within the administration who are members, who are connected with the order. When you get a group of quite capable men working together, they can wear down opposition, they can erode opposition, because they're all kind of marching in step. If you get 3 men marching in step, they can do more than 20 men marching to their own step. Do I make my point here? And within the order, for example, or within the administration, you've got, for example, Mr. Bush, and the people around Mr. Bush, Mr. Baker, Chief of Staff in the White House. And gradually you've seen the weeding out of those individuals who are independent. They've either resigned or they've moved out to other departments. So in effect, the order has taken over very gradually and very carefully, without any fanfare.
How is the order then managing the conflict in the Middle East? It's hard to believe that the Arabs or the Iranians or the Iraqis are actually under anyone's control except their own.
I can't fully answer that today. Many of these questions you can only answer maybe 10 years later, when you can look at it in perspective. For example, I can look at Pearl Harbor today and see quite clearly a much different picture on Pearl Harbor than was put out in 1941. I can't look at the Middle East today and make too much sense, except you've obviously got two sides. You've got the Hegelian dialectic at work. You've got conflict being created, conflict being managed. The Marines go in, the Marines go out. Today, the Iraq is attacking the Iranian oil bases. You've got the deliberate two sides in these conflicts, the deliberate creation of conflict and the management of conflict.
Put it this way, is Castro in Cuba because the order wants him there?
Could I rephrase the question? Is Marxist Angola remaining a Marxist Angola because the order wants him? The answer there is yes, because I know in Angola, the Gulf Oil Company is the biggest supplier of foreign exchange to Marxist Angola. Pull Gulf Oil out of there, there's no more Marxist Angola. I can't answer as clearly for Cuba.
So Gulf Oil wants Marxism?
Oh, yes, it wants, undoubtedly.
And Marxism supports Gulf Oil?
Oh yes, in fact Cabinda, the Gulf oil installation in Angola, is defended by Cuban troops. But you see, you've got an interesting phenomena.
I think everyone should hear that one more time.
I said
Cuban troops.
Cabinda, which is the Gulf oil installation in Angola, Marxist Angola, is defended by Cuban troops.
So here we have Cuban troops defending a capitalist
so-called
monopoly.
So-called capitalist. But one of the first things you learn in this business is forget about capitalism versus communism. That is absolute nonsense. The two are, behind the scenes, are hand in hand.
It's a capitalist-communist conspiracy. One conspiracy.
Yes, but you need the so-called conflict between the two to keep people focusing. Look, they keep you looking over there. You know, capitalism versus communism. You know, that makes a nice little picture. You know, you get books on it and films on it. Capitalism versus communism. That's not where the action is. The action is over here.
Well, what's the greatest single threat to the United States in terms of Central America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, the government of Mexico, that we need to be aware of in terms of an understanding that it is the order that is arranging things that are very detrimental to the future of this country?
Well, there you have a complex picture, because it's not only a Marxist movement, it's also a rebellion against poverty, and there's bitter poverty down there, as we all know. You have to go across the border into Mexico to realize that. You have the intervention of certain religious groups, the Maryknoll Sisters, the Jesuits. That's another conflicting factor down there. You have, for example, in Panama, where the Panama Canal was handed back to Panama, there's a story behind that which involves the debts that Panama owed to the United States and the functions of Marine Midland Bank, and of course Sol Leiner was director of Marine Midland, was a negotiator down there. You've got a very complex picture in Central America. What it is the creation of turmoil. Out of it, we will either get bogged down in another war, or we'll get a series of Marxist states. But what we're heading into, I think, is an era where the order is willing to back some Marxist states, but not others. It will back Marxist Angola. It tried to back Nicaragua for a while. It would not back Grenada. In other words, we're getting to a situation where there are good and bad Marxists.
So, in other words, the order made it possible for us to go into Grenada.
Oh, yes.
If they were backing the Soviets there, we couldn't have gone in.
Yes, because they were bad Marxists. Bad in quotes.
They were bad Marxists.
But you see, all this helps create conflict, helps perpetuate conflict. We never discuss what to me is elementary. All right, if these people are causing all the trouble in the world, we're not going to help them. We just cut off trade, we cut off technology, we cut off finance. Because the two key elements used to control these countries is debt and technology. So we'll cut off finance, we'll cut off technology. Marxism can't survive a decade without Western finance and Western technology. It'll crumble. But we won't do that. Why won't we do it? The only answer is we have to keep these systems going to create conflict.
So we mourn the shedding of blood of our Marines and their deaths when we ourselves are giving our blood and sweat every day of our lives to feed this international system.
International conflict system.
What do you think is the most important statement that you would like to give to the American people regarding the challenge they face in the order?
I think the challenge that they face affects not only their lives, but those of their children and their grandchildren. What can they do? I think first is understand what it's all about, to listen and to learn more. And then, as I've argued in one of my books, to develop their own individual plan. What role in their life, what are they going to do as individuals to thwart or to block in their own little way the purposes of the order? Whereas it may be joining an organization like yours, or maybe 1,000 different ways of doing it. So I think it's up to an individual to look at this and decide what he or she is going to do.
And also discover that there is strength in union and strength in numbers when tackling a Goliath of this proportion.
Yes, particularly I think psychological strength. I have no problems with acting alone, but I think most people do. I think most people prefer to have what you might call a peer group that thinks and acts as they do, and they